Hi, it's Dave here. This is my wife, Kathy.
Hello.
This is the Cinemile. It's the podcast where we used to walk home from the movies. But now we're watching movies that are released exclusively on streaming services. Like this one with Gerard Butler.
Which I think came out like a month ago.
So we are on trend.
We're hot on the pulse of streaming releases.
So we heard this was good. It's been recommended to us by quite a few people.
And long-term listeners will know that we love Gerard Butler action movies.
Well,
we went to see one
mixed bag, I'd say.
2019 with our very good friend Nick, who is an emergency planner, and we went to see Angel Has Fallen with him, and we were going to go...
And you went to Geostorm with him, which I missed
Geostorm
out on. That looked like a cracking movie, like a just stupid disaster movie, right?
And it was very enjoyable. So we wanted to watch this with Nick, but it was not meant to be. COVID gets in the way yet again. But we're pumped. We're going to watch it tonight. We're recording now as we walk around on a lovely spring day. And yeah, I mean, I don't know anything about it except that it's a Gerard Butler action movie that's set around like probably something to do with the climate.
It's a disaster movie. That's
right.
That much I know. So
okay.
It's a Geostorm-esque.
That's exactly what I'm picturing.
It might actually be a Geostorm sequel.
Is it initially? Is it in his contract now?
All I know,
will only do natural disaster
I'll only
movies.
do Geostorm movies. All I remember from the trailer, Geostorm. Let's spend this episode just talking about Geostorm.
No, because you haven't
what
seen
I picture
Geostorm.
it to be. That thing where he's like, it's like this Senate hearing or something, and everyone's just hushed in silence and whispering, is grumbling. Then Gerard Butler storms in and goes, "Sorry I'm late, but I had to come from outer space."
That was basically the vibe of Greenland.
It's just like,
oh no, sorry, this is Greenland. That was the vibe of that movie.
So I hope
great fun.
It's that. If it's just some of that, then sign me up.
Well, I'm going to be interested on it because I don't know. I'm going to do some research after we watch it.
Oh, you're going to do some research? Oh.
Just a little bit. I don't know if it was originally supposed to have a cinematic release or if it was actually commissioned by Amazon to be on the streaming service, because a lot of them are like, you know, really big budget, like big screen stuff. Geostorm did for sure. So I'd be curious to see when we're watching this if it's like one of those ones that we should have been watching in a cinema or if it like quite happily sits on Amazon.
Yeah.
So that I'm curious about. Do you know what? This is just like my vibe. This is exactly the kind of movie I want to be watching right now. My brain is not ready for much else.
Yeah.
And
stupid disaster movie.
And the fact that people have been saying it's good, like random people have been texting me saying, "Oh, I think you'd like Greenland." I'm like, yes. Thank you.
That's actually, honestly though, the fact that it's supposed to be good is actually a cause for concern for me because I don't want a good movie. I want Geostorm, right?
No, but as in as in enjoyable, not good.
I want so bad it's good.
No, I don't want that. I mean, I want an enjoyable movie, and I'm also just like at this point, any vague form of like feeling like a big budget actiony like release. At the moment, the closest thing we're getting to that is WandaVision, which we are loving. But I want the cinematic equivalent, so I'm excited. We're going to watch it tonight, and we will report back after we've seen it.
See you then.
See you then.
Bye.
Bye.
We now are getting word that the fragment has hit Central Florida.
Oh my God.
Wait, are some more pieces gonna hit?
Come on, let's go.
But the sky's on fire.
2 days. They got it all wrong. There's a ton of fragments. Planet killers.
Space agencies are predicting an extinction level event.
We're gonna be together, all right, kiddo? We're just trying to get to safety.
They've been tracking the military flights to bunkers in Greenland.
It's their only chance.
Move back! Perimeter breach. Perimeter breach. Runway 33.
Allison! Nathan! Allison!
Where's Dad?
We'll find him. It's okay. Earth's largest fragment will hit in less than 24 hours.
I swear, I'm gonna get my family into that bunker. I know you will, son.
If you are hearing this broadcast, seek shelter immediately.
Right, we're back. We watched Greenland. We're out for another walk with the kids, so going to keep this one very PG.
As opposed to our normal episode.
As opposed to our normal
R-rated.
X-rated explicit chats about Gerard Butler movies. So we won't, if it's your first time here on the Cinemile, hello, welcome.
Hello.
We don't spoil movies yet, but we will be turning on to a very real place that we live near called Spoiler Street shortly, in which we will give full tilt on this Gerard Butler disaster film.
And let's say it's going to be a pretty short review because it's one of those movies that we actually both enjoyed, but like very quickly slips from your memory because there's not that much to unpack. Really.
Yeah, but that's it. I thought it was actually really good. It was surprisingly good. It packs way more of an emotional punch than I was expecting.
Yeah, agree.
This is a movie that's for a disaster movie. This is more interested in small scale family personal dynamics and emotions rather than the large scale continent capital building decision making monuments being destroyed level of disaster movies, which we usually get. And
it's
for the most part,
it
makes the movie work really well.
It's almost like, I thought it was almost more of like a road movie than a disaster movie at all, actually.
Yeah.
But we won't get. We need to be careful of spoilers, but 100% agree with you. Like, it's all about family stakes, really low stakes.
Personal stakes.
Yeah,
the stakes are high, but they're
extremely high, but not. If one person does this one thing, the world ends. It's if one person does this one thing, they'll like lose a family member, which is the world to you.
Yeah, exactly.
And as a viewer, I found it was so not what I was expecting at all. Like, almost immediately, I was incredibly emotionally gripped, and like to the point where I was like actually like quite upset watching it because
it's hard. It's a hard watch.
It's a lot
as
of
a parent.
A lot of peril towards children.
There's one bit which we'll talk about in spoilers where we were both like. F this movie now. I don't know if I can do.
Yeah, I actually said I can watch it. So I wasn't expected, because usually the kind of movie I was thinking of as kind of an equivalent. I thought this might be around was like 2012, the John Cusack movie. But it's not like that, and it's actually not an action movie at all. I would not class this as an action movie. Jared Butler is not an action star in this. He's just basically a dad and a husband. And
yeah, because when you get into this isn't a spoiler, but when you get introduced to Jared Butler in this movie, he's like they've literally cast him as the everyman.
He's an architect.
He's like at a building site wearing a hard hat.
Yeah.
Talking about logging off early. And you're just like, I'm just a normal schmuck.
I'm
just a normal average Joe.
His accent's so weird that we spent the whole movie debating.
No.
I thought he was supposed to be Irish, and Dave's like, he's supposed to be Scottish. Turns out he was supposed to be
He's just doing
Scottish.
his own accent.
He just
it's as simple as that.
It's just an odd accent that sounded sometimes like a Northern Irish accent.
It's the accent of a Scottish person who has probably lived in LA, I'm guessing, for 20 years.
I guess, yeah. So anyway, the big reveal did not come at the end that he was Irish, which is what I thought the plot twist was going to be.
Why would... This is infuriating me that you were sticking your guns so hard. Like, why would Jared Butler make a Scottish person decide to do, when he's given the opportunity to not have to put on an American accent, decide, no, this guy's Irish?
No, but it wouldn't have been his decision. Like, it would have been something to do with the plot. But anyway, we digress. I thought it was much better than I was expecting. It's not at all like Geostorm or 2012 or any of those movies, and it's very gripping, and to the point where I was like quite upset sometimes. I would also say for a movie like this, it has very few sets and not really a big set, it's not like big set pieces. It's not like huge money spent on huge effects, so I would say it's relatively low budget.
This has the feeling of a low budget film that has made very good use of its budget. It's very economical and effective. I think the filmmaking on display here is
it's
really strong.
Good.
Like, this is actually, it's a really, really solid
It's a
movie.
really good script. It's really good acting, and
yeah.
it's
Marina Baccarin, I'm probably butchering her name. It plays Jared Butler's wife in this.
She's great.
You'd know her from Firefly and House of Cards, right? No, not House of Cards. What was that? Homeland.
I
Yeah.
think Sex and the City.
She was
She's in a
Damian
lot
Lewis's,
of things. But anyway, the acting is brilliant. I thought the script was really good. I really enjoyed the action. And for me, I was more riveted than this movie than I am in a lot of action movies, including like, very big Marvel Universe ones, because anytime there was any sort of action as such, the stakes were huge to me because they're involving specific characters that I'm very invested in. It was not like, oh look, there's a giant exploding robot and the world's about to end, and like, it was just it's a disaster situation, but following a specific family story. A little bit, some of it reminded me of, like, do you remember in Independence Day when, like, we would sometimes cut to like Will Smith's girlfriend and her kid.
Yeah.
And I personally found them like probably the most interesting plot, and that's kind of I felt very emotionally engaged with this.
That's a good call back. If the entire movie was from their perspective.
Yeah, so it's just to me
and their stupid Labrador.
Like whilst it being lower stakes makes it higher stakes, and that's really cool.
So this movie understands that and gets it right.
The other thing it does is so often in these movies there's like a central male character and everyone else exists around him serving a purpose of effectively propelling his storyline and fueling his ego. Now, unfortunately, I can't remember either character's names in this movie, but the wife character has,
Gerard
I would
and
say,
Marina, I think
has as much screen time as Gerard Butler. She's autonomous. She is cool. She is not playing second fiddle to him at all. I would call it a co-starring role. I wouldn't say that he's the lead. And I really enjoy that because it just, again, added to that there's a bit more depth to this film than a lot of these films have.
However, we did notice a couple of weird underlying... You noticed some interesting underlying sexism in this movie. That's a common thread throughout
100%.
Many movies.
Like I said today.
Which we'll come back to in spoiler
Well,
street,
no, this isn't a spoiler. I said today.
No, because you do need to reference something that happens to his character to do it. So
no, I don't.
Yes, you do.
Okay, fine. Yeah, I've just realised what you mean.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So on that note, I think we've kind of said enough about Top Line. I think I'd recommend this.
Oh, I'd really recommend it. Yeah, but I'd really recommend it. But it's more. I would say it's more of a family drama than an action film. So take that away before you watch it. If you're looking for like Independence Day or 2012, it's not that.
Yeah, exactly.
If you're looking for a hard-hitting family drama where you're on the edge of your seat, concerned about like a child's health. Which I have to say I wasn't quite prepared for, and I got more upset than I probably should have watching some of the stuff around families just being an emotional time in all of our lives and having two young kids.
Do you know what? I gotta say, what it really reminded me of, another disaster movie, was Steven Spielberg's War of the Worlds with Tom Cruise, which does the exact same thing. It's an alien invasion told through the eyes of just everyman Tom Cruise and his
Tom Cruise is not an everyman.
No, yeah, I'm not saying he's an effective everyman, but he's strong in that movie, and the movie never leaves him and his two children, and it's similarly very effective because they're going through the similar thing of trying to get by in the chaos of society collapsing around them.
Yeah,
and it's and that is a very interesting, and I gotta say, when I watch movies like this, it always reminds me how thin the construct of society and civilization and order is, and how quickly it can disappear.
Yeah,
and we saw it. You know, we saw a tiny glimpse into what could be at the beginning of 2020 with sort of like toilet paper and shopping panic and all this, and that was very quickly, thankfully, kind of resolved. But that's the kind of thing which can escalate, if not like to a point where suddenly it's, you know, this movie deals with a lot of what could happen when people are panicked and have to make hard choices.
And it was like it's almost like, I think that's partially why I was like a bit upset at watching this movie, and it like was close to the bone, because we have been living in a pandemic. We have experienced, at the beginning of the pandemic particularly, but like that terror of society unraveling and like being very like extra protective of your family because of the situation you're in. And I felt like it all was a bit close to the bone, but at the end of the day it's ultimately a rather forgetful like action film that's family centered, forgettable, but nonetheless really enjoyed it. And now we are turning onto spoiler street. What good timing.
Right, so spoilers now for Greenland, available now on Prime Video. Actually, just before we step onto spoiler street, let's step onto Patreon shout-out street. So we have a Patreon page over at patreon.com/The Cinema, where you can support the show if you like what we're doing, and you get access to an entirely extra podcast feed where we do TV reviews. We're just about to do WandaVision. We've done loads of other stuff. We've got like 25 plus retro movie reviews that you get to choose in there. Loads of stuff to feast.
And we're just about to do
on.
It's a Sin.
Oh yeah, which is great.
So all the good new shows we're talking about.
So you also get a shout out on the show, just like the lovely people who joined the Cinemile High Club in February, and they are Adrian Cash. Thank you, Adrian. Thank you, Sophie Ryan. Thank you, Zombie Kitty. Thank you, Leanne Gale, and thank you, James. And thank you all of you for donating for £2 or £3 a month.
And we've got a new offer where you can join for a whole year up front and you get like a month free. So
right.
You may be interested in doing that too.
And that's patreon.com/the Cinemile. Now.
We both said that at the same time. That's so Irish.
That's
of us.
very Irish.
I've noticed our 3-year-old now, Oscar, says that as well. Sometimes he'll go, now.
Now. Now then.
So
Spoiler Street.
I've forgotten the whole movie.
Right, so let's start the thing where you wanted to talk about, the sexism.
Oh yeah, I just pointed this out to Dave because I thought, Dave might have never noticed this. In most movies you will find when there's a man and a woman in a car, the man is always driving. I pointed it out to Dave at the start of this movie. He then spent the entire movie being blown away by the fact.
I couldn't believe this. And I was like, that can't, surely she's going to drive at some stage.
Because we know she can drive, right? There's no plot that she can't drive.
Yeah. They're driving, and they're driving like hours and hours. They're driving across the entire country into Canada.
Yeah.
He's been driving by himself, hasn't slept in probably
it's really
days.
Unsafe. At one point in the movie, she and the child get off a bus. Presumably they've been on it for a few days. She slept on that bus, right? Jared Butler, we know,
has driven through the night
and been attacked,
been
injured, right? And then Jared Butler gets in and starts driving, and I'm like, this is obscene.
Still doesn't sleep.
It's actually putting the safety of himself, his wife, and his child at risk. And no one questions it.
And then his hand gets grievously burned and injured, and he continues to drive. He has the use of one hand, hasn't slept in days, but I'm a man, so I have to do the driving.
But I love that if I hadn't pointed it out to you, you'd have never noticed.
No,
it's insidious sexism.
Totally insidious. And it's just like, it's so stupid, it's particularly in a movie, as you pointed out, in which they are very equal build, and she is
she's kick ass.
She's driving the plot like massively by herself, so it's like it just seems so pointless and incidental. And I wonder, is it just like he's our star, he's the big star, he's our action guy, he's got to drive.
I would say it's not even thought about. I would say it's such like institutional insidious sexism that it's just, okay, here's a driving scene, Jared's driving.
But that's what I mean. It would have to be thought about, because it was like they were placed in those positions.
But not thought about though. Just like, okay, Jared, you're driving, and now you're in the driver's seat, even though he's sleep deprived and has no hand.
Anyway.
But so kind of some of the specifics we were talking about, like very early on in the movie, it's like, oh, this kid has an insulin pump, and I was like to Dave, oh, here we go, there's going to be an insulin pump plot. I didn't expect, because at the start of the movie, which is quite fun, they basically get this alert on their telly and on the phone to be like, you have been selected to go to this bunker.
This is such a good idea that it's created. They create this discrepancy between people. Basically this class system emerges in the middle of this crisis, which is all literally you're labelled, like you've got a wristband which can save your life.
It's kind of like a vaccine passport.
A little bit, like, and the movie plays on that concept really well for the first half, and the what people would go to take those wristbands.
But what really surprised me about it is, and again, I hadn't seen the trailer, right, so I was working off nothing here, just my own presuppositions about these sorts of movies. I never dreamed that the whole plot of the movie was just them getting to the bunker. So when they were I thought it was going to happen at some point down the line, they'll be in the bumper and they'll run out of insulin. No, the insulin plot is like, they get to the aeroplane that's supposed to bring them to the bunker, the kid leaves his bloody insulin in the car, Jared Butler goes back to get it, and from that point, for like at least half of the movie, he's then separated from his family, and like, that's when I started getting really upset. Like, I knew they'd never let anything bad happen. The kid, I knew the kid was going to get insulin from somewhere.
I wasn't so sure when that couple in the most horrendous scene, the heart-wrenching scene of this movie, when that couple drive away with the kid.
Oh my God!
In the back.
So the wife and the kid are split up from Jared Butler. They end up in a situation where this seemingly nice and normal couple, and I actually think they were nice and normal, pick them up in the car. But then the man who is driving spots that they have wristbands, and you just see the cogs start turning,
Yeah.
and it's that thing of like, what? And you think about it,
was very
what would you
believable.
do to save your family? And if we didn't have wristbands and someone else did, we don't know how we'd act.
What was really interesting is that you could the way that he as a person was trying to justify it externally to him but almost he's trying to convince himself, this is for the best, we can help your child, while he's literally dragging a mother.
He dragged her out of the car
in what is just,
it's horrific.
Honestly, one of the most awful things
and it
I've
happens
seen.
so quickly. He literally stops the car, drags her out of the car, throws her at the side of a motorway, and they just get in and drive away. And that was when I was like, I'm going to get sick.
At that, and I was the same. And at that point, I was like, what type of movie is this? Because this either goes two ways, and one is like, this will be resolved and we'll get our happy ending, and that's kind of what I naturally wanted. And then the other side of is this just a movie that's going to lean into its darkness, and it's like the world is collapsing and people are awful.
They did a really good job of of both with this plot, I think.
Well, I think by going for the first option, which was the one I wanted, the one we got, the happy ending, it kind of lost its credibility or believability.
Let's leave the ending for a minute, because let's continue.
But just immediately after that, she's reunited with the boy very, very quickly.
It wasn't that quickly. Like, okay, we know they're all on the same road to the same place. They're going to hit the same roadblock, right? Like, I think this movie
the same set as the first roadblock.
I think, we did. That's what economical use of sets. They all look the same. I actually think they kind of dragged the kid being separated from his parents out about as long as you could before you're talking about a really fucked up film.
Yeah, I guess.
And what I absolutely loved is they get to the next checkpoint and the two new fake parents are like, oh, this is our son we're going through, and the kid's petrified, he's shaking, he's crying, and the man said to him, like, your mom will be okay if we take you, kind of thing, like very threatening. And then the kid finally speaks up and he goes, they're not my... He's such a good actor. He goes, they're not my parents. They're not my parents. They took me from my parents.
That was a real punch the air moment where you're like, yes, good on you,
so
kid.
So the kid was a hero. So the kid saved himself. The woman was saving herself and the kid. Jared Butler was saving himself. And I was like, it just felt like they felt like a very rounded family.
You're right. Nobody's being rescued per se. Everyone is enabling their own personal
and it's like, I
victories.
think in real life, I really do think in real life the kid probably wouldn't have stood up, and I wouldn't, of course, you would never hold that against a child because it's a fucked up situation to be in. But
I think
that was a real punch the air moment. And then when she finally found the kid, and then of course someone said, and look, here's 2 weeks worth of insulin for you to take away. And then Dave and I were like, wait, in the American health system, I believe they don't just hand out free medicine to people, but they're doing it in the middle of...
What I said to you in that moment was like, the American healthcare system is like infamous for being like
awful.
It's notorious for being like very difficult to get treated on, or you come out with an insane amount of deaths, or you just don't get treated. We all know these things and all the institutional problems with healthcare in America. But yet, in one of the biggest crises the world is ending, they've solved all the healthcare issues. That's all they needed, and it's just like, hey, everybody.
But look, but what about, we totally backtracked on the fact
that... Sorry, on that point, you could also argue that when you take away insurance and funding and healthcare and all these things that are inhibiting that long term, and they're all going to die in a few days, then it's like, it probably does make sense that it's like, hey, we're good people, we're doctors, and we have all this medicine, so you're going to get treated instantly.
And when they were like, and I thought it was really interesting when they were like earlier on, people with long-term illnesses can't come on the bunker, and it's really sad and awful, but you can kind of think, okay, pragmatically, I guess that makes sense because they wouldn't have the medicine with them, right? Like,
well,
in that bunker,
and they're trying to repopulate.
How is the kid surviving? Because I still think he only had about 8 weeks insulin on him.
Well, that's true.
But anyway, let's not go into every plot, but then they finally all get back together again, then they finally get to Canada or wherever it is where they're going to fly, and then the guy from Mindhunter shows up to be the pilot, which was awesome. And then it's like, at that point, then they get to the bunker where everyone's very happy to let them in, and then we were like, oh my god, because kind of earlier on in the film they had said your life flashes before your eyes before you die.
Yeah.
And they kind of said something like, every happy memory will happen.
And the boy says, why can't it happen when you're alive?
Yeah.
Which would be nice.
And then at the end, the three of them are in the bunker together, and we know there's Jared Butler, by the way, has been an awful husband and cheated on his wife. And she's like, I forgive you, fine. Then the three of them are together just embracing, and like I was just bawling, crying, because it was like the kid looks really like our son Elliot. He's got like the exact same hair as him and stuff, and like I was like, oh my god, this montage is really beautiful. And we both said, oh, this is so powerful, because what's going to happen is it's just going to go black and we'll never know if they survived or not. And we were like, this isn't,
and it won't matter, because they were together at the end or at the beginning.
Yeah. And either way, our goal was only ever for the three of them to be together. Our goal as a viewer wasn't.
And we both, credited the movie with this brilliant ending which they had come up with.
Yeah, and then
that didn't happen. And then the movie was like, do you know what we need? Monuments. Well, I wonder what's happening to the Sydney Opera House.
I actually said to Dave,
I wonder what the Eiffel Tower would look like. Let's cram them all in.
I said to Dave earlier in the movie, isn't it so great to watch an action movie where they're not like, here's the Eiffel Tower, here's the Sydney Opera House, here's the Great Wall of China, and it was like, oh no,
it's like
it's
like this movie got to the finish line and it like had absolutely smashed it, did like beat its own record. It would be like great entry into the disaster films, but it's like, oh, hang on, what if we saw the White House explode?
They initially took footage from other disaster movies and just slightly repurposed
but also
it.
then their budget, it's like, how much of your budget went into that? Did you just have a lot of
that was just still imagery of monuments.
It didn't look good.
It looked off. It was
so
like,
it's like,
it was
what
awful.
are you doing,
and
movie?
then we're like, okay.
And then it got worse, because it was like them emerging from the chaos, and already plants or birds are singing.
No, a bird went by and they were like, the birds are singing
There's
again.
hope. But
and
I'm like, no, you had hope when you gave us your nice montage a minute ago.
I wonder if there was like, that was the original ending, and then it was like some studio executive somewhere went, no, I gotta know.
But what happened to the world? It'd be like, that same studio executive said that about the end of Inception, which I won't spoil. But they'd be, it's probably like,
I just think
but what happened?
Honestly, if they hadn't done it, I'd have been sitting there going, okay, it's wonderful that you all made it back together and that you had this incredible moment where your lives flashed before your eyes and Gerard Butler's completely repented for his sins and you know, all the rest of it. But like, what happened to the Sydney Opera House? I just like, it's a burning question.
Is everyone in Sydney okay?
And they also then made a point of like showing us a map and all little dots lighting up on the map and to be like, Moscow here, China speaking.
That was awful as well.
Like, oh.
We're all alive.
Actually,
everyone made it.
All of this is completely fine. Also, I just have to say on one note, for like earlier on in the movie when Gerard Butler goes and steals someone's car and he leaves them a note and says like, I will return this car. I'm
that
like,
was nice.
do you know what, that was kind of shitty, because they actually might have needed that car, Gerard Butler, and now you're never returning it.
There's a whole other movie where they're also trying to get to Greenland and then they're like, they finally got their wristbands and they get home and their car's been stolen.
It was actually really embarrassing of me, because it was only when someone was like, we're getting over the border because we're going to fly to Greenland. I was like, oh, Greenland, that's the name of this movie. And is that partially because like you've not gone to the cinema, you've not bought a ticket, you don't even remember the name of what you're watching? It's just like, there's the Gerard Butler movie that's on Amazon Prime.
I mean, I'd argue you and I have paid money to go to the movies for movies you can't even remember the name of going in or going out. Do you remember when we went to see Rampage and you kept calling it Skyscraper?
Yes,
the other The Rock
but that
movie.
Was incredibly confusing because they were like the same movie as well. But anyway, I digress. Have you anything left to say on Greenland?
Yes,
the
I
country
do.
and the movie?
So Gerard Butler, our guy, is like this absolute, like, just noble dude, like from beginning to end.
Except that we find out he was cheating on his wife.
Well, except for that, yeah.
Only through her father as well, which is like, I don't know, that was all a bit sexist.
But he he leaves the note, as you say, for this car. He's that kind of person, you know. He'll always kind of try and do the right thing if he can. But yet at one stage his neighbour tells him, please call me if you find out anything about how to save our lives. And he says, I will. And then he doesn't.
But he can't, because he's trying to phone his wife to meet up with her to give their son insulin.
I know,
he can't even phone the wife, so he's not going to phone the neighbour.
No, because he's in the dad's house and the dad has a working landline who receives a call from the wife to say where to pick him up. So I'm saying it was just a little bit of an oversight on his arm. He could have just told him, like, if you can get to X location, there are planes leaving.
Yeah. Also, like, it was kind of sad because it was like they were like, they had to drive through their neighbourhood and everyone knew that they'd been selected and everyone's trying to jump and one woman is like, take my daughter, just take my daughter.
That's the kind of stuff where you're just like, this is...
And then later on they're trying to get cars to stop for them and they won't stop for them and it's like, oh God, it's all miserable.
That's why this move, by dealing with things like that on a tiny, tiny level, is way more interesting and impactful, like that dilemma, than what's happening in the equivalent of this movie. So if you could have the same situation, like asteroids are hitting Earth, but if we set it in the White House and there's scientists trying to stop it, and it's like we need Bruce Willis to go up there with a mining crew, and do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Suddenly, that's the stakes are so big there that they're not interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But I think we've talked about Greenland a lot.
Yeah, we got
enough.
it. We really rinsed it.
Yeah. And at the start of this podcast, I was like, I've already forgotten it. I've nothing to say. And I recommend it. Yeah.
Yeah. So thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Go check out Jared Butler's entire oeuvre of work.
And if you haven't already done so, we haven't asked in a while. We would greatly appreciate it if you have access to Apple Podcasts, that you would subscribe to us and rate us.
Or whatever you're listening to, subscribe.
Whatever you're listening to, but Apple Podcasts is the currency of podcasting, for good or bad. So if you've access to it, please rate and subscribe us there. We really appreciate it. And of course, head over to Patreon to find more movie and TV reviews.
Yeah, and you can let us know what you thought of Greenland or whatever else at the Cinemile on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, or thecinemile@gmail.com.
Bye.
Bye.
If you are hearing this broadcast,
John, go!
Hang on, Nathan.
seek shelter immediately. Seek shelter immediately.